Today we're going to talk about maritime presence and its effects. My lovely assistant Trebizond is here to help show it off. As you can see, Trebizond starts controlling Trebizond and the territory around it, but it also controls this province up here in the Black Sea. Our experiment for today will be to see whether we can increase control in this province with no proximity and very little control, just via using maritime presence. But before we get into that, let's look at what exactly maritime presence is. Maritime presence is essentially a form of control that you project into provinces that border your land. You can see that at the start of the game, every country has 50% maritime presence in the provinces they border, which is slowly going to decay down. There are a few ways to increase maritime presence at the start of the game. Those are, number one, in rural provinces we can build fishing villages. These will apply a very, very little maritime presence. One of the main benefits from building these fishing villages isn't really the maritime presence bonus, but the sailor bonus. The sailors are very helpful with increasing maritime presence, as we'll see later on. The second building of note that you can build that helps with maritime presence at the beginning are wharfs. Wharfs can only be built in towns and cities. They do not increase the maritime presence. Instead, they increase the harbour capacity as well as provide sailors. Let's take a little look at what harbour capacity is. If we click on Trebizond here, we can see this small icon. This is our harbour capacity in Trebizond. As you can see, the harbour capacity is at 25% simply because it's a natural harbour, and this is what it provides. It provides a 0.07 increase to maritime presence, but it also decreases the cost of travelling through ports. Let me show you how that works. If we switch over to our proximity to capital view, we can see our capital Trebizond here, and if we click on the provinces around it, we can see it's travelling via land. But if we click on the provinces further afield, you'll see that proximity is actually travelling via sea, because it's faster to get via sea than it is to go over land due to the provinces not having roads and being mountainous. And if we hover over one of our provinces, we can see the proximity is travelling from Trebizond to the sea, to the next sea, and then down to the coast. So the way proximity works when it's traveling through water, as it were, is it costs a lot of proximity to leave the land and travel onto the sea. How much it costs comes back to our harbour capacity with the proximity cost of traveling through ports. Then it decreases based on the amount of maritime presence in a province before finally arriving in a province. Now, we're going to skip forward in time a little to a game I made earlier so I can really show off how maritime presence works. Welcome to Trebizond around 100 years in the future in 1436. Now let's take a look at our maritime presence here. As you can see, I've achieved 100% maritime presence in these provinces off the coast of Trebizond. I've even managed to get it to stretch all the way up to that northern province I mentioned at the beginning. And how did I do this? Ships, mainly. The main way you can increase maritime presence is via your navy, specifically via a specific kind of navy. Once you research banking as part of the Renaissance, you can gain access to light ships. Light ships massively increase maritime presence in the provinces that they're in. And as you can see here, I have deployed some ships, specifically 22 to the area, and those 22 are ensuring we sit at 100% maritime presence in these provinces. Before we continue, let me show you how maritime presence from ships works. If we switch over to the province map mode, you'll actually see that the sea has provinces. So the way ships work is they increase the maritime presence in the sea province they're in. So you'll see that our ships are sitting here off the coast of Trebizond, but they are also increasing the maritime presence in all of these territories next to them. And it's the same for this fleet up here. It is increasing the maritime presence in all of these provinces. Not these ones up here, because this is the Sea of Azov, even though it's the same color as the Black Sea here. So do keep in mind, maritime presence can be increased in all of the provinces via navies, not just one. So you don't need to spread a bunch of ships around a region, just placing one group of ships in the region or province, sea province, is enough to increase maritime presence. So let's go back and look at our current territories. You'll notice I haven't built any roads outside of this one that was built by an estate in these provinces. So let's look at what control looks like in these provinces with 100% maritime presence. As you can see, control enters onto the water, travels through the provinces and arrives in the province. Our proximity in this town, this city, is at 49% due to traveling via sea. We can actually see the cost of traveling through the sea provinces is actually pretty low. It's only costing us 4 control to get through each of these provinces. The main cost to our proximity is actually coming from disembarking onto the land. Something that, as I mentioned, we can combat via harbour capacity as time goes on. You'll notice I've built a dock in this province, which also increases harbour capacity. And at higher levels, at the maximum level, it will increase harbour capacity by 30%. Hypothetically, not even really hypothetically, almost definitely, you'll be able to increase harbour capacity to 100% later on, ensuring that the cost of travelling via sea is much reduced. Even further, if we look at the maritime presence in our sea provinces, we can see that the cost of travelling is at max with 100% maritime presence is 4.77, which I'm then reducing further down due to technologies like local infrastructure, via centralization, and via my ruler's admin ability. Again, hypothetically, you should be able to reduce the cost of maritime travel to very low, potentially 1 or even 2. And then if you manage to increase harbour capacity further as well, you could reach a point where it's almost free to travel via the sea provinces. If we go to the geopolitics screen and look at maritime, we can see some stats about our maritime presence. We can see that we gain a flat increase to the percentage of maritime presence from our navy tradition, our conflict between naval and land, and some research. This actually means the navy societal value is actually very valuable. As you can see, not only does it increase maritime presence, but it also decreases the cost of traveling through sea provinces. At the maximum level of naval societal value, it increases the maritime presence increase by 30% and decreases the cost by a whole 1. But there are also other benefits to increasing maritime presence. High maritime presence increases your trade advantage. The way trade advantage works is, within a market, there is a certain amount of goods that are produced, and the trade advantage affects who in the market gains access to the goods first. As you can see, we, Trebizond, are at the top of the trade advantage for our market, even though we don't control much of the land in it. As such, when goods are produced in this market or enter the market, our pops will be the ones that gain access to them first. You can actually see our trade profits. They're not as high as our other competitors at only 28 ducats, but you have to consider that our other competitors own large portions of territory compared to us, and a lot of that territory is in this market. Could we increase our trade power even higher? Definitely. I wasn't exactly optimizing for it in this playthrough because I was focusing on increasing maritime presence. But by gaining high maritime presence, we can really monopolize the goods within a market. So now let's take a look at that province I mentioned at the beginning, up at the far north, very far away from our mainland. How much control have we been able to get in this province? The answer is 41%. You may remember at the beginning, we sat at 0 due to the distance. If I had taken this province via land and built roads, it would likely still be at 0%, simply due to the distance between it and Trebizond. But due to reducing the cost of travelling via these sea provinces down so low, we're able to achieve 40% proximity in this province, despite it being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 provinces away from the capital. If we click on the province, you can see the route our control is taking, leaving Trebizond here, travelling across the Black Sea, before finally arriving in the province. The province's harbour capacity is then coming into effect and affecting how much of the control is lost when it disembarks. As this province is just a rural province, we're not able to increase our harbour capacity much. But if I turned this province into a town, or if it was a town or city, I could build docks and wharfs to increase harbour capacity even further, and so decrease the cost of entering the province via sea. In this way, you can see that harbour capacity actually has a lot of utility. Hypothetically, if you're able to achieve Mare Nostrum as a Roman nation with your capital in Rome, you could then spread your control quite far afield by controlling these sea provinces and deploying navies in them. But on the flip side, if you were a landlocked nation, like take Hungary, maritime presence isn't going to do much for you, not only because you don't have many sea provinces, and in this case Hungary has literally zero, but you have to also take into account your capital, as just with land, control spreads from your capital. So unless your capital can gain access to the sea, like if we take Castile for example, who's moved their capital up north, unless your capital actually extends to the sea, maritime presence isn't going to benefit you, because you need to have control in those coastal provinces for that control to exit onto the sea to start with. If we take a look at England, for example, they are also able to get quite a bit of control from the sea via their capital of London, which leads to the east coast of England being much higher in control than the internal provinces, simply because travelling control via sea is simply faster and more efficient than travelling via land. If we actually look at England entirely, they've managed to decrease the cost of travelling from London to the sea, that being the Thames, to 0.01 due to a bridge they've built, their massive harbour capacity, the development of the province, and of course little ruler ability. We could also achieve the same thing if we were able to massively increase our harbour capacity in the same way. And that means these provinces here are only spending 0.1 to travel through this sea tile, and then the main loss of proximity is coming from disembarking. Proximity costs from travelling through the port. But not every province is going to be like London, that starts with 85% harbour capacity. So with other provinces, you'll need to make sure that you increase your harbour capacity through buildings, as well as increase your control in the maritime provinces via ships. So to bring this video to a close, is maritime presence good and valuable? Yes. Is it something you can heavily invest in at the start of the game? No, not really. At the start of the game, your only real methods for increasing it are via buildings like the fishing village and the wharf. Right, I think we'll leave it there for today. If you have any further questions about maritime presence and its use, don't hesitate to ask me. I'll do my best to answer them. I do think a maritime presence build is actually viable. For example, only controlling the coastal provinces and then massively increasing your maritime presence to ensure that those provinces are sitting at close to 100% control, and then leaving the interior of the world to vassals to control. A reverse Switzer Lake, if you will. Something akin to the Long Chile, as it were. Right, thank you for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful or even enjoyable to watch. Is there a concept you're struggling with that you'd like me to invest my not very valuable time into trying to understand and experiment with? Then don't hesitate to ask me. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.